Okay, we are here in the Santa Rita Hills, and what a better place to be in the Santa Rita Hills than right here in the Fiddlesticks Vineyard. In fact, the Fiddlesticks Vineyard, right here behind us, some of the best Pinot Noir is grown right here behind us. And we're here for a very special occasion as well, the Santa Rita Hills Wine Growers Alliance. And they're having a whole weekend of really cool, fun events. There's a gala celebration tonight, a grand tasting at the La Parisma Mission, which is really looking forward to. However, we're starting the day off with some legends. Speaking about legends, we got a bunch of them in the barn right over here. We're going to have a Chardonnay symposium and a Pinot Noir symposium. So this should be, knowing these men and ladies of this whole area, these great winemakers, they are amazing, and it should be a lot of lively conversation, to say the least. So stay right here with us, and we'll take you in right here to the Fire and Wine event at the Santa Rita Hills Wine Growers Alliance.
Josh Reynolds. I work right with Stephen Cancer's International Wine Cellar out of New York, and I cover the Central Coast of California. This is my 8th year doing it with Steve, and I feel very comfortable saying that right now, well, I hate to say give a starting point, but definitely within the last decade, Santa Rita Hills has absolutely confirmed its space, its position as one of the premier growing regions, particularly for Pinot Noir in the world. And I think I like to say it's not an opinion, I think it's a fact. I think anybody who has a chance to try the wines, I taste with a lot of people from Europe. I take a lot of American wines to Europe when I travel there, and the reception that the wines from here get is pretty flattering, I guess humbling for me as an American and as a fan of this region. It's really gratifying. And one of the things that happened here, and is continuing to happen right now, is a critical mass has been hit of really serious producers, serious vineyards, serious producers. And what that does in any region is it raises the bar higher. I'll give you an example of a place where it's not happening yet, is Southern Oregon, the Rogue Valley. There are a couple of really, really good people there, but they're years away from actually making something happen and being able to sort of position themselves as a really serious region, because there just aren't enough people there doing a really serious job. Willamette Valley, hit it a while ago, Sonoma obviously, Napa obviously, and without a question here. And what I've seen happen, perception from our readers and other people I talk about, is that now it's moved to a point where we're talking about individual sections of the Central Coast. 25 years ago when I got this business, the Central Coast was really, it went from Santa Barbara all the way up to Paso and everything in between. People didn't know San Lucia Highlands, Santa Rita Hills, it didn't really mean anything. So what's happened is this has obviously been split up so that people understand these things. The next step, which I already see happening, and this is something that Wes will do, is people understanding the sections of this area. And that is what starts to be known as terroir, which is kind of a fancy word, it's a controversial word, it's a loaded word. And terroir isn't really just the dirt. I worked many, many years ago with a producer in Burgundy who told me that of all the elements of terroir, of all elements, the most important one is the man. And the French do see terroir as man plus vineyard, soil, exposition, weather. And the simple fact of the matter is no man, no terroir. I was talking to somebody earlier, I said it's like sheet music. If you look at a piece of sheet music, if you don't understand how to read it and you can't play an instrument, it's utterly worthless. It's a piece of paper with scribbling on it. Show it to a child and see their reaction. The job of the winemaker is to interpret that. And in my view, the best winemakers interpret it their own way. It's getting the most, what they see as the most from that piece of land, that they have that fruit that comes off that land, and do their thing. I try to, as a reviewer, keep that in mind. I try not to put my own expectations on the wines too. I say, oh, this is really, if a wine's flawed, that's one thing. But you can get into some really long, interesting discussions with producers about why did you do this? Why are you doing differently than your neighbor? And what are you doing if you want to really get geeky about it? And that's one of the things I want to do with this panel. Each of these people brought a wine that they chose, and what I would love each person to do to briefly introduce themselves and tell where they do what they do, and also why they chose this particular wine to basically make a statement for what they do, what their winery is, and their own take on Santa Rita Hills. So, Nikki first.
You go first. Great. I'm Nikki Nelson. My husband and I, Jeff Nelson, who's here today, we started a project in 2009 called Liquid Farm. Kind of started the project because we ate local, but we didn't drink a ton of local wine. We love white Burgundy and came across some exceptional wines from this region that really just spoke to us. And a close friend of ours, Brandon Sparks Gillis, and the guys at Chardonnay Cellars were able to help us get started in 2009. All the fruit came from Dan's Vineyard. But yeah, it's all Chardonnay, all Santa Rita Hills, and we're very honored to be doing what we're doing.
I'm Dan Kessler. We have our vineyard over on 246 on the far kind of west and north side of the AVA, which is fairly cool. We're on a rolling hill kind of a site, lower than some areas, so we're very cool. We think when we got here, I think Chardonnay is kind of the dark horse star of this area in some ways, and we really wanted to showcase it. We planted 3 acres of Chardonnay on our vineyard, a 30-acre vineyard. The rest is Pinot. We put it in a very primo spot. A lot of people were saying, why didn't you plant Pinot there? We wanted to give it a perfect place to grow, to express the area. We used a very low vigor rootstock and several different clones. And you'll see in the wines, especially over on that side, that there's a lot of minerality, a lot of layers to it, a lot of complexity. And they make great food wines. And my wife Ellen and I, this project is kind of our project together. We love to cook, and we wanted wines that we could cook with and enjoy.
Good morning. I'm Karen Steinwachs, and I'm the co-owner and winemaker for Sea Grape Wine Company, which is a little bit of a passion project of my husband and mine. We focus only on Santa Rita Hills, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir from this region. I've been making wine from Santa Rita Hills since 2001. Started at Foley Estates, and when we first planted that vineyard, that gorgeous 400-acre vineyard, which is mostly Chardonnay and Pinot, and the first vintages made from Foley, I was lucky to be working with Norm Yost, we're all connected here. Talk about 6 degrees, you have no idea. It's really incestuous. And then I had the opportunity to work with Kathy, and this was my office here for a while. So while there's no Chardonnay here, I've been in Santa Rita Hills since I've been making wine. It's a delightful paradise for Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. And personally, I have a feeling that there is not enough Chardonnay planted here. Obviously, when people are planting, it's more financially beneficial to sell Pinot Noir grapes and to sell a bottle of Pinot Noir than it is Chardonnay. The Chardonnay from Santa Rita Hills is just astounding. You can work with it. It's a very giving grape, and yet you're always going to have this trace of what this region is about. It's going to be racy, and it's going to also be creamy, and it's got this really fun yin-yang thing going on that I don't see in other regions. I love Chardonnay from anywhere, and by the way, I have to say that this is one of my breakfast wines, so here we go.
My name is Wes Hagan. I'm the winemaker and vineyard manager at Clopepi Vineyards and Clopepi Estate Wines. I love the Santa Rita Hills. This is a place where I've chosen to make my home. It's a beautiful, cool climate. Obviously, if you look around the world today, 96 degrees in Dijon, 90 degrees up in the Willamette Valley. It's even 90 degrees in Sonoma Coast. And today we may hit 78 here today. So it feels a little warm. Realize in the world of Pinot Noir, you are feeling the air conditioning. Any moment during summer in the Santa Rita Hills, unless we get a really serious heat wave, you can feel the Pacific Ocean fighting summer on the east side of the valley. And I like to say the Pinot Noir blushes knowing the fight is really all about her. Chardonnay, though, all things being equal, a few people on this panel have already mentioned, I think Chardonnay is the greatest grape that we produce in the Santa Rita Hills. Pinot Noir, it gets a lot of attention, but as far as sort of the red-headed stepchild of the wine industry, Chardonnay is really considered almost as much of a commodity as it is a wine grape. It's almost synonymous for white wine. So when you find a region like this that can produce such amazingly beautiful fruit, I think that we can look at a lot of different styles. If you like a little oak, you're going to find this in the panel. If you like stainless steel, you're going to find it on the panel. What we've done is mix the wines up. We don't even know what's in front of us. And we're going to be discussing each other's wines to kind of mix this up a little bit. So if you're wondering which wines you're tasting, you don't know, we don't know, nobody knows. A couple people in the back, but that's about it. This is exciting. So we're going to be kind of off the cuff talking about these wines. I chose the 2010 Homage to Chablis Chardonnay from the Santa Rita Hills and from Clos Pepe specifically because it's a wine that's made without, it was explained to me, Chardonnay is a grape that we hang a lot of clothes on. And I thought, well, she's just so pretty naked. You know? But as I've made this wine for 11 vintages, I've discovered that making wine in stainless steel is as much affectation as making wine in oak. It's both a manipulation. So I'm not any longer saying, well, I'm making these pure Chardonnays that have no influence of French oak. I'm making the wines in a style that I love to drink, which the greatest Chardonnays in the world I've ever tasted have been from Chablis. Sorry, Montrachet, it's just a little too much for me. I like elegance, I like minerality, and I like wines that age and show layers as they continue. So without getting too involved and too wound up, that's about where I'll start.
First of all, I want to know how I drew the short straw to follow Wes, but that's I'm Steve Fennell. I'm the winemaker and general manager at Sanford Winery, which is just kind of across the road there. I came down here from Napa almost 7 years ago, and I'm thrilled to be here. This is one of the most exciting regions in the entire world for growing grapes. And for me, Chardonnay was a huge draw. They were both producing Pinot and Chardonnay, which we do. They were both very appealing, but the Chardonnay was actually the single biggest draw because, as both Karen and Wes said, there's not as much Chardonnay here planted nearly as there is Pinot Noir, but I think in the world of fine wines, in some ways it actually stands out even more in terms of its distinctive characteristics, and I think you'll see that in these wines. I'm extremely fortunate that I get to look after two great estate vineyards. We have Rancho La Rinconada, which is the vineyard that surrounds the winery, and our majority partner, the Trelato family, actually bought the Sanford and Benedict vineyard in 2007. So now we have these two wonderful vineyards planted primarily to Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. And I don't want to embarrass him, but I do want to introduce Michael Benedict, who is in the audience, who was the founding partner in Sanford and Benedict, and I now get the great honor and privilege to look after that vineyard and make wine. So I'm very happy to be here.
It's changed the world of the way people think about Chardonnay for the ones who drink it. And sorry, Riesling, but I think Chardonnay is the most expressive white grape in the world. It's not our fault 99% of it is grown in too hot of a climate. So it is the expressive grape, it is the transparent grape when it's grown in the right place. It makes a wonderful commodity wine in the wrong place, but when you put it in the right place with the right soil, with the right hand guiding it, I think there's something very profound about these wines where sort of like, it's like a Shakespearean sonnet. You can read it to your lover and just let it go through your brain. You can really concentrate on what the author is trying to say, what the soil is saying, what the climate is saying. And these are time machine wines. They will take you back to a time and a place if you really pay attention to them.
Because I dropped out of the high-tech world in 2001 and I came up here because my husband and I drove up here all the time from Los Angeles to enjoy the wines. We found it to be an incredible place for an amazing diversity of wines because, this is what we haven't touched on yet, but Wes probably will in the vineyard tour. This is the only place you're going to get a transverse valley where the valley goes east and west. Anywhere on the Western Hemisphere other than Denali in Alaska or Tierra del Fuego in Chile. And you're probably not seeing a lot of wines out of those two regions. So because of that, we have one of the most unique wine-growing regions in North America, if not the world. And I love the fact that Josh thinks that we're world-class.
I'm saying it's not a thing. You guys are proving it.
That's, I think, what we're trying. As far as I came here and then I was in high tech and our company went out of business. I dropped out. I came up to work harvest in 2001. It was absolutely the lowest of the lowest cellar rats. I wasn't even a rat. I was kind of a mouse. And what I found was that what makes this place so special is not just this amazing wine growing region, but the people here are awesome. we have a friend that's here making wine, and he picked grapes on Friday. All of a sudden realized, because they're building a new winery, didn't have a bin dumper, so, how the hell is he going to get the grapes out of the bins and into the press? So just call somebody up, and Morgan isn't here. But if you know Morgan Clendenin, she is one sophisticated, classy-looking gal. She drove her forklift down Highway 246, you can imagine, so that they could borrow the forklift and the bin dumper in order to get this done. And that happens here all the time. We don't have meetings because we're not that organized, really. We're kind of a loose group of people that enjoy each other's company and each other's wines, and I think that whenever any of us have a problem, we know who to call. It's kind of like the Ghostbusters region of the world. And we all do. I mean, I don't think anyone that I know of that grows and makes wine here feels that they are the be-all, know-all. If you run into an issue that you're kind of flummoxed by, you call somebody. And we quite consistently go around and just taste each other's wines as well.
Fascinated by the development of wine culture, and as a young region, I looked to Burgundy, I looked to Bordeaux, I looked to Alsace, and asked myself, how did wine culture develop there? It took from the Roman era to the modern era to really develop wine culture, and it seems like in the New World we're in such a rush to develop wine cultures to sort of make ourselves legitimate without a French or Italian accent. It seems almost impossible in the New World. So in the process of developing a wine culture, we need to look at the crops that grow on this ground, the critters that run around through our vineyards. We got quail, we got boar, we have deer. All of these things happen to match beautifully with Pinot Noir. So I think the things that live on this ground, the wines that come out of this region, there's beautiful chanterelle mushrooms in the hills, there's quail, venison, and boar. These things all are going to end up on a table with people that love them. And I think that's where wine culture starts. Wine culture is not created, wine culture evolves. And we have to start taking a more slow food approach. I like to call it slow wine. Let's not define ourselves and buttonhole what we are. Let's let this evolve. It's going to take hundreds of years to develop a wine culture. And on top of that, in a couple hundred years, we may have our own grapes here if we allow these grapes to mutate and choose to start using massal selection over clonal selection to start actually creating grapes that belong here that haven't been stolen from Burgundy. Because I don't understand how terroir can exist in a place with stolen varietals planted on alien soil, but I'm young in the game, maybe I'll understand it as time progresses. I think we need 300 years and 10 replants of these vineyards to develop our own varietals that are just genetically distinct enough from Pinot Noir and Chardonnay to say, these are our grapes. And that's kind of what I'm looking forward to. I'll be dead 250 years, but I hope people look back and say, well, one guy was slamming his fist saying, let's stop relying on the clones from Burgundy to stop defining who we are. So I think this is a long period ahead of us. And as culture develops, this is going to be something that really is going to, what's going to define us? Are we going to define ourselves, or are we going to allow the wines to define who we are? And I hope it's the latter.
I have a question for Wes. I want to know where he grows the oysters on his vineyard.
Unfortunately, I have to purchase them, but a dollar oyster night at 246 is always a happy one.
Now, on that same clonal issue, there is what we've identified as the Sanford and Benedict clone. And we call it the Sanford and Benedict clone, which is, Pinot Noir that's grown across the street forever and ever since, what, Michael, 71, planted. So it's mutated into its own thing. I don't think it's been DNA sequence as being called that, but we all know it's different.
Sure.
Let's talk about age.
Really, acid is really, I think, the basis of keeping a wine stable. And because the wines have such beautiful acidity, some of the most beautiful bottle-aged wines I've tasted from the Santa Rita Hills, I like to think of Rick Longoria's Chardonnays and how well they age over 10 or 15 years even. I think you can say that there's a certain legitimacy to any wine that can go 10 years in the cellar, because it's partially kind of anti-American, because it takes so much patience to not drink a wine for 10 years and then expect. And then when you do, you kind of expect to be disappointed because you don't know where it is in its life. But I think Santa Rita Hills Chardonnays have an extraordinary capacity to age. Is distinct enough from Santa Rosa Road that really there should be. And I don't agree in the sense that I think that when you split hairs, consumers get really confused. Santa Rita Hills, you can say, is carefully chosen to really show both sides, but there are differences, just the way that Burgundy is Burgundy, but Côte Nuit and Côte d'Or are different. Yes, there's Pinot Noir in Montrachet. If you've ever had a Montrachet Pinot Noir, holy God, they're just beautiful. I mean, really minerally. So my historical context is there are people who believe the Santa Rita Hills could definitely be delineated and split between Santa Rosa Road, which is the south portion, and Highway 246 in the north portion. You will notice that Santa Rosa Road portion is about 2 miles longer, and we got a lot of people that are pissed off at me for drawing the line and cutting off a good part of the 246. We did that because where it makes a big turn and the air doesn't have perfect flow down the valleys, we stopped the AVA. And that AVA, yes, it's a little warmer on the far east side of Santa Rosa Road than 246, but in general, I think that it all can be defined as cool climate viticulture and all has the same, a little bit of the same character.
I'd say all
Operate in cobs. First of all, it's illegal in the county of Santa Barbara. Big surprise to make a cave on your property. There have been a few people who experimented with it, and funky shit grows in it. You do not want to make wine in the cave in Santa Barbara. The things that you'll get in your wine will take away any of the potential benefit of using a cool underground cellar. First of all, we have built-in air conditioning. It's a warm day. It's hard to imagine. Remember, it's 100 degrees everywhere else. Pinot Noir is growing today. But I think that obviously cellar temperature and cellar ambient temperature and the way that your cellar works, if I believed in terroir in the New World, I would say terroir extends into the cellar, even to the point where the wines at the back of my winery taste different from the wines at the front of my winery. And we all know this. Every barrel, even from the same lot, tastes different. So the climate in which we actually perform our winemaking duties and age these wines in élevage really do make an impact on the style of the wine, how fast it goes through malolactic. I don't want to get into chemical stuff, but let me say the treatment of the wine and the temperature of the wine after harvest is not as important as the climate of the vintage, but it really does make a difference. And I love the idea of having a cave. I love the idea of being underground and not having to use electricity to air condition. But even in an un-air conditioned cellar in Lompoc, even during a heat wave, I've never seen temperatures go over 70, 71 degrees in the cellar. And it normally stays right between 55 and 65 year-round with no climate control, just bringing in night air and insulation.